Rob, I'm going to pass it over to you to just introduce yourself. And then, Elizabeth, you can say a few things about yourself, and then we'll get started with some questions. And I'll be monitoring the chat. So if you have something specific, pop it in the chat. We'll answer as we go. Okay?
Okay.
All right, Rob.
Well, my name is Rob Greenley, and I've been in the podcasting space since 2004, as far as a official podcaster. So I've been around a long time. I've worked for a lot of different companies. I've worked for Libsyn, Podbean, um, StreamYard, Microsoft, Podcast One, a lot of podcast hosting platforms and content networks and things like that. And that's kind of what I'm working on now. Is I'm working on building podcast networks. But I've been around the space a long time. I've been a content creator as well as an executive at a lot of these companies. And so I have a lot of kind of like on the ground experience, and I'm always curious to learn more, because just because I've been around this medium for 20 years doesn't mean that I know it all or that I have experienced everything. And that's one of the reasons why I still create content. I've got a YouTube channel that I've had for, I guess it was like, must be coming up on 18 years now. So that's been around a long time. I haven't been consistent on YouTube. It's only been the last couple of years that I've really kind of stepped up on the YouTube side. But have a couple of shows. I do a show that was mentioned here, the New Media Show, and that's been around for about 14 years. And my co-host passed away last September. So there was a stretch of time for a couple months when I wasn't sure if that show was going to come back and stay alive. It has a strong hit. We've done close to 700 episodes, and we talk about the new media space and what's happening with podcasting and this convergence that we're seeing around video. And that's what's really been the focus of my work over the last couple of years, is really digging into the video side. I did a 1-year contract for StreamYard, created some content on their platform, and then also was a consultant to them to kind of bridge this growing need for content creators to create video and to create audio kind of at the same time. So, and
Mm-hmm.
that really gets back to the core of the tension that I think that the medium is in right now, and why I'm here to talk about it. Now, granted, I'm here to talk about Podfest, but Podfest is always a reflection of where the medium is. And to some degree, Podfest is a little bit of an exception from where the media is, or where the podcasting is today, only from the perspective that it's very focused on the content creator side, the indie creator side. There's a whole nother side to podcasting, which has a long shadow on individual creators now, and that's coming out of the professional side of podcasting. Because now we are the mainstream media now. I somewhat hate
Right.
to say that, but in some ways it's like it's true. I mean,
It is.
the online distribution piece now with YouTube and podcasting, that combination is reaching more people than legacy mainstream media now. So, we have taken over, this digital side, have taken over the trophy or whatever for having the biggest audience. And so that puts a lot of pressure on individual creators to step up their game, right? So you have this kind of like new people entering the space, and then you have people that have been around podcasting and YouTube for 6, 7, 8 years, and that side of content creation has gotten very sophisticated. It's gotten much deeper metrics. It's gotten um, expectations that are more algorithmic, which causes conflict with a podcaster, which typically has not been algorithmic or structured in this way, and having deep metrics and and just the ability to see how your content is performing and having an algorithm drive audience to it based on the quality of that content. So you have lots of tensions going on, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So,
That's fantastic. Thank you. And we're so lucky to have you here, Rob. Thank you. He truly is a Hall of Famer in the podcast world with so much knowledge. Uh, But we also have Elizabeth Gearhart here, who is also an amazing podcaster and incredibly knowledgeable and really digging deep into the AI side. Maybe you can share just a little bit about you as well, Elizabeth.
Sure. So I'm Elizabeth Gearhart. I wear a few different hats. We put food on the table with my husband's law firm, Gearhart Law. So I'm the chief marketing officer there. And as my role as chief marketing officer, what I see it is seeing how to stay ahead of the competition digitally. So what can we do with our website and our content? And my husband Richard and I have the Passage to Profit show. It's a radio show that was turned into a podcast. And then we pulled another podcast out of that we just started, and it's called Real AI Use Cases Business Owners Roundtable. So we have a segment inside Passage to Profit where people who own businesses talk about how they're using AI in their business. And so we pulled that out as a second podcast that we just recently launched. And I enjoy it. It's really fun. Um, so I'm doing those two things. And then I have a studio. We have a studio for content creation. It's a video studio. I also have an audio studio in New Jersey. Is that enough? I can
Yeah,
keep going.
you can keep going.
Yeah, no,
Same
that's
with
good.
me.
That's
Yeah.
good. That's good. That's great. Elizabeth, maybe could you just give us just a short lay of the land, just a little bit of how Podfest is organized, and we will spend some of the time sort of reviewing what was there, what you guys learned, and then yes, to Rob's point, we do want to look forward of what do we need to see in the future of 2026 in the podcasting world, and we have this amazing opportunity to get your insight. But if you could just, Podfest has so many different things, but it's sort of set up in tracks. Could you just give us a little bit of how that is and where you spent most of your time?
Right. So there's the beginner track, which is great for a lot of people. There's a monetization track, there's a growth track. Rob probably knows them better than I do. But I hung out in the AI track the whole time. So my presentation was an AI presentation, so it was in the AI track. And it's really interesting the range of presentations in that AI track. So I'm an analytical chemist by training, so I go deep into the weeds. Like I'm so detail oriented, I drive people insane. Um, but I went deep into the weeds and showed people queries they could do to get the results they wanted, that kind of stuff. Other people were more like Rob, a little bit higher level, like out in the looking down from a high level view. Uh, but it was all sorts of different kinds of presentations. There were two keynotes, the beginning keynote and the ending keynote. Those were excellent. But I do want to have Rob talk a little bit, if we can, about the Hall of Fame, because Richard and I went to that. That was amazing.
Yes. So we'll send it back to you, Rob, if you could share the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's the Podcast Hall of Fame has been around since 2015, and its whole purpose is to recognize people that have made significant contributions to the growth and development of podcasting. And that can come from a bunch of different places in the medium. There's the folks that are talking on a mic, and then there's folks that are behind the scenes, starting companies or helping support people that are on the mic, right? Or hosting platforms or other, it comes from lots of different places, and it oftentimes goes back in time too to people that were very critical to the formative years of podcasting too, that may or may not be still as much involved in the medium today. So it's not necessarily a popularity contest from the standpoint of what you've done in the last 12 months. This is it's somewhat like a lifetime achievement award of sorts, but in some ways it's even different than that. So this past year, 2026, we inducted 10 new people into the Podcast Hall of Fame. Last year, I inducted in about 11 people into the Podcast Hall of Fame in 2025. And so, and it comes from a process of gathering nominations from people in the community on a global scale, of people that can be put into a list of candidates to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. So, and then the past inductees and the board kind of go through a voting process based on all those nominations of sorts. It's not a paid submission nomination type of a thing like a lot of podcast awards are, because that's really not what it is. It's not a podcast awards stuff, though sometimes it gets labeled as an awards platform, but in a lot of ways it's not. It doesn't really fit into that box. So it's something that's really a passion project for me. I got inducted in 2017 as part of the podcast movement conference. That's who actually started the Hall of Fame, was Podcast Movement, which I think we've talked about before in the past. But it's a conference that I also combined it with a podcast awards ceremony. So about 4 years ago, Podcast Movement decided that they weren't going to host it anymore. So the Podcast Hall of Famers that were in there, of which there was about 30 plus people that had already been inducted, all kind of got together and voiced their opinion and wanted to keep it alive. So we took it back from Podcast Movement, and I asked Chris Kremitzos over at Podfest if he would be willing to take it on as a hosting event for the Hall of Fame. And so that's what we've done for the last 4 years. Is Chris and Podfest have hosted this. It's a live in-person ceremony. It's currently available to watch the full ceremony that happened in 2026 down there. Most of the people that attended paid for tickets to be there. So, as part of the whole production, we captured it in 4K video, and it's a terrific kind of video production. So if you wanted to see at a deeper level all the people that got inducted and what their story was and how they got there and things like that. And I know a lot of people would love to be in the Hall of Fame, right? So it's one of those things that if you watch the ceremony, you can get a kind of a picture of the type of people and the type of journey that the Hall of Fame is really all about. And it's slowly becoming less historical and more modern, right? To the more current podcasters that have had a big impact as well. So
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment on that, Rob,
yeah,
if I could.
sure.
So it seems like if you go way back to, what was it, 2007 or something when you started, it was mostly men, right?
Oh,
Because,
actually back in 2004 is when it
well,
all started.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it was mostly men. And so you would think this podcast Hall of Fame would be like 9 men, men and 1 woman. That was not the case. I was so happy to see so many women up there.
Well, the earlier years of podcasting was pretty much dominated by men, just because you had to be so technical, and the women and lots of people just weren't gravitated towards taking that on back in that time frame, right?
Right.
And so as the years have gone by, and as it's been easier to get involved in podcasting, we've seen more people get involved. And so it was a gradual thing that happened. But there were people, even the earliest times in 2004 and 2005. I knew most of them because there wasn't very many of them,
Right.
and there wasn't that many of them. Period. Or as far as any podcasters back in the early days, it was like maybe a couple hundred globally at the time, and of which maybe there was like maybe 5 to 10 women that were involved in it even back then. And some of those women have been inducted into the Hall of Fame already. So, and then there's been other people that started maybe back in the 2009 timeframe that have been inducted as well. So it's been a gradual growing thing. And that's what we're going to see with the Hall of Fame, is that it's going to be much more diverse in the representation that's going to be on stage at the Hall of Fame, because that's how the medium evolved. It actually has developed that. I would say now, I'd say there's probably more women entering the podcast medium today than at any point in the history of podcasting, and it may be beyond the
That's
scope
great because we have so
of,
many women on here. So I
well,
hope they're
I mean,
very inspired by
And
I
that.
we
mean,
have so much to say.
Right.
just
Yeah, we
look at
like to
this
talk.
panel, right? Just look at this panel. I'm 1/3.
Exactly.
So
You know, Rob,
it's,
I would love to
yeah.
take you because I mean, I think, look, it's a rare opportunity to talk to somebody with as much experience as you and being on the Hall of Fame panel down at Podfest. I'm wondering if you could give us a little bird's eye view of what did you talk about? What were the takeaways? What were some of the things? I know we're probably starting at like the high there of the most experienced people talking about trends or well,
Yeah.
what did you talk about? If you
Well,
could shed some light on that, we'd love to hear. What were the
yeah, I think
takeaways
that
from that?
the discussion with the Hall of Fame panel and the discussion with the New Media Show panel had a lot of overlap in concepts, because we were talking about the key drivers of what's happening in the medium right now, and how the medium is evolving. It's always been changing every year. This medium has never grown exponentially in any aspect, and it's always been an evolution. It's always been, well, last year this is what happened. Next year it's not like it's going to be a massive growth or massive evolution of anything. It's just going to take what we know today, and it will kind of move a little bit more further down the path of where it's already heading. And I think what most people, I mean, I saw like 3 years ago that video was coming back, right? And it was gradually coming back, and it all was triggered based on YouTube. And what YouTube was doing by creating a playlist, a video podcast playlist, and calling it that. It's not like they did anything really revolutionary in the platform, really. At the end of the day, they just retitled a playlist to be, you can classify it as a podcast, right? So,
Yeah.
but it did include the opportunity to have that content that you labeled as a video podcast show up in the YouTube Music app. So you had kind of like there was a little bit of a benefit there to flagging what you're doing, but the core of the issue is that a lot of the content that was flagged a podcast in YouTube really wasn't a podcast. It just happened to be a series of videos that people posted to their YouTube channels, right? So
How
that
would you
isn't,
distinguish what's the difference between a video on YouTube, because some people might not know, a video on YouTube and a podcast that has video?
well, there's a modern view and there's a traditional view. And the more traditional view is anything, any content that you distribute via RSS, which would take it into like Apple Podcasts or into Spotify or any number of other smaller apps out there that are primarily labeled as podcast listening or viewing apps, right? Because it is possible to view video in a podcast app, as long as it's made available via RSS, which is the distribution technology that's used to, publish once and have it go to all these different apps. And that's where the industry has kind of reached this tension point. Is the fact was, well, YouTube created a playlist called podcasts, but it had nothing to do with RSS. So you had this kind of like this perception of what a podcast is, and the reality of the audience seeing this playlist in YouTube as a podcast. And so all of a sudden, everything in that playlist, the viewer is seeing, well, that must be a podcast, right? And there are telltale signs, right? It's like, I have this boom microphone and I'm talking, talking head video or whatever, and that's traditionally what a person thinks of as a podcast. But now we're seeing increasingly people doing content that's podcast now that doesn't have this anymore. They're using lavaliers, or they're using boom mics that are out of the screen and stuff like that. So we're getting into this blended perception type of thing, where those that don't have this microphone in front of their mouths may be seen as not podcasters now. So you have this tension, right, of perception. And that's really what this is all about. It's audience perception. The industry gets all spun up about, well, it doesn't have an RSS feed in it, so it must not be a podcast. Well, that's more of a traditional historical view on what it is. And I've always argued that really what makes podcasting unique is the type of content it is, and the format of it, and the openness of it, and the fact that it's not a structured piece of legacy media content, right? That has a lot of controls and a lot of barriers and limitations on the amount of topics or genre. I think that what's happened with the internet and with internet distribution is that it's opened up to everyone and all these different topics. Just look at YouTube. You can, fix your toilet based on watching a YouTube video. So, but that's something that's unique to YouTube. That's not something that's typically been produced in a podcast, right? That's usually, this is the kind of content that's usually in a podcast, what we're doing here right now, not fixing toilets. So that's kind of, I could probably talk all night about this, but I want to throw it back to you guys now. We can move on from that.
So, Elizabeth, I'm going to jump to you just for a second. We have two questions, and we could bump it to the end, but I do want to address both Carl and Amber who put in. And this is a little different than the podcast track of AI that you are on, but maybe you could just briefly address that. What's the main purpose of podcasting, and what's the clearest path to podcasting? I'm not sure that there's an easy answer for the second one, but maybe you could just address it, and then we'll come back to AI.
So the main purpose of podcasting is to tell your story. And Sonia did a wonderful presentation on this meetup, I forget when, on know your why. Why are you doing it? So we started doing the Passage to Profit show to drive business to Gearhart Law, my husband's law firm. And as Rob was mentioning before we really started, business is starting to take over podcasts now. There's a lot of branded podcasts now where businesses are really getting into the game. That's what we started it for, but it's to tell your story and have your voice heard. I think that's the main reason. And the purpose is I think, to share things that have happened to you that maybe people thought that they had the same thing happen to them, and maybe they thought it had never happened to anyone else. And then when they hear that it happened to you, they don't feel so alone, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I
Rob,
think
what do
it's
you?
sharing stories, expertise. I think it's to
Mm-hmm,
increase your platform. It often goes in conjunction with sort of a business platform, almost like you, Elizabeth. Like you're,
mm-hmm,
you're speaking about entrepreneurs, and yet it's also a bit of a feeder into the law firm. And now the AI and podcasting is sort of helping your podcast studio and what you're doing. So a lot of
mm-hmm.
times it's got multiple things. Maybe it's just a passion project or something you want to
Yeah.
share with the world, or maybe it's part of a business objective, and it's an avenue in which you can reach more people. And Rob, I don't know if it seemed like you were about to say something too about that. I would love to hear your point of view.
Always. But it's really, I think, what's different is that podcasting is typically authentic and real voices that tend to have a better chance of building trust. I think as we see more AI content be created, I think we might all have our AI filters turned on a little bit more when it comes to podcasts, because there are companies that are starting to ramp up their AI generated content activities in the podcasting space. But historically, it's been very authentic, conversations. One may or may not have an interest in the conversation, or the characters involved in creating that podcast are maybe not interesting to you or not entertaining enough, or, there's a lot of factors that go into why an audience connects with a podcast differently that they would connect with a TV show on NBC, right? So, I think it's the human factor. And but AI is going to disrupt that. I think we're seeing it a lot right now already in the shorts platforms, AI generated content. Increasingly, we're seeing it a lot even in YouTube, where you have cloned personalities. Like I could create a complete clone of myself saying these words right now, and you may or may not be able to tell, right? So that's the tension that we're moving into, is an era where, can we trust content? What type of content do we know is trustworthy? What kind of content do we feel emotionally attached to, because it is human? And maybe some of us are going to be attached more to AI content because it's perfect, right? It depends on your level of expectation on the content, because AI in some ways, it may be just a matter of time, but it will be perfect. And that may be the filter, right? It's almost like doing what we're doing tonight is like proof of life, right? I mean, but there is going to be a time when I'm going to be able to do this live show and I'm a clone of myself.
Yeah.
And
I saw that at Podfest. I
right.
saw there was a presenter, she's a professor, and she has a clone. And if a student has a question in the middle of the night, they ask her clone.
Yeah, right. So will we value that clone in the same way than actually talking to a real life human? That's a question that I think we have an idea that we have an answer to that, but I'm not really sure at this point, because we really haven't reached a tipping point on this yet, where people are going to have to decide, is the AI version of Rob Greenley going to be less trustworthy than the real Rob Greenley, or not? Or is he just a reflection of the real Rob Greenley? Right.
Right.
So
Well, I think,
that's the tension.
yeah, I think people I like using the AI answer machines like ChatGPT and stuff. And one of
Yeah.
the things, I mean, Chat is always giving you really positive strokes, but one of the things I like about him is I can ask the stupidest question. Like I can go, it's like, okay, see this on your screen. I can go like, I don't see that on my screen. And I can send it a screenshot and it'll go, oh, okay. But it never says, well, that's because you're an idiot.
Yeah, it's
Which is,
never rude or inconsiderate, right? Is that what you're saying?
well, yeah, Claude got a little snarky with me one time.
Well, I know Grok has that capability. There's different modes that you can put it into, right? One is like
Yeah.
conspiracy theorist and snarky and humorous, like a stand-up
Yeah.
comedian type of a mode.
Yeah, but I do think that some of the AI podcasts, they're getting better and better. So how do you capture that authenticity? But I think
Yeah.
I I've been working with the AI answer engines and asking them questions, and the human creativity comes into what questions that you ask. And AI can't or doesn't think of some of these questions.
Yeah.
The ones I'm asking anyways. And I think that that's what interviewers can do. So um, I think that if one thing about a great interview, if you're doing a podcast, is if you can get your guests to tell you something they haven't talked about before, is
That's the
really,
key. That's
yeah.
that's the real key. If you're involved in any kind of interview format, you've got to get your guests to talk about things that they haven't talked about in the last 10 interviews they've done.
Oh, right.
Right.
Oh, and then getting
Yeah. Some,
started. Yeah,
oh yeah, getting
getting
started.
started.
Yeah.
Um, so
And with that, maybe, sorry, Elizabeth, I'm going to jump in because there's two questions that you might be able to answer in one. One was, what was the clearest path to getting started? And also, when you're developing your podcast style format, what did you intentionally practice or learn to support it? So it's a little bit of what's the clearest path? And then what did you specifically do to learn that would also support that beginning entry point?
I've gotten so lazy now, but so we started this new podcast.
I would never call
And
you lazy.
okay, I ask AI everything. So
Not at all.
we started this new podcast, and as Rob mentioned, they're getting so sophisticated now, the way people are doing it. So I went to one of the LLMs. Google Gemini, I think, is the best one right now, but they keep leapfrogging over each other. And I asked the LLM, give me a business plan for this podcast. And it will give you a business plan. And I have a studio, so I didn't need to buy equipment or rent equipment, but it'll tell you what to do to try to get your podcast out there and to get started. A lot of people do it on a phone. I've heard a lot of that. What do you think, Rob? Did you hear a lot of that at Podfest?
Yeah, I think that's been a general kind of narrative that's been going on for a while now. And there's really no reason why you can't do it that way. I just think that there's lighting issues you have to be considerate about. And I think there's the audio side, which is the microphone part of this too, that has to be taken into consideration. I mean, certainly the iPhone is, from a visual perspective, if you're doing video, is very capable. And
Do you think
so,
we'll be able to just pop in raw footage on our iPhones and then have AI make it perfect? So it would be us, but they'll fix the lighting, fix the sound, and make it all
yes.
look pretty.
That would be nice. I don't know if it's there yet. I mean, we used a script in CapCut, but yeah, I mean, we were talking about that today about can we take our different camera, we have 3 different cameras in CapCut and make the lighting the same because there's one camera that's a little different,
Yeah,
right?
it's going to be expensive to try and use AI like that. I think it's definitely going to be more commonplace in the future, but currently AI is not really good at processing long form or high quality video right now to upgrade it. Now, granted, there's I'm sure some specialized
Yeah,
AIs,
Final Cut Pro, we're seeing in
right,
the comments. Final Cut
Yeah.
Pro will match lighting and automatically sync
right,
cams with audio.
right, but it's not
Right.
like commonly available through like ChatGPT or
Yeah.
Grok or any of
Mhm.
these platforms to be able to really process existing video. So, but
And
it's coming.
to the question about what did we start with and learn. So it's changed so much. Like even things we're using a year ago are different now.
Yeah.
Um, but we did learn to script, and I learned Canva, but now I'm using Manus, but Canva's a lot cheaper. Manus is expensive. Meta just bought it, and they've just jacked the prices way up. Um, but
So can you tell us a little bit, because I know you were really excited when you came back from Podfest. You were like, I just learned about Manus and I had, and so that was one of your big takeaways on the AI track. Can you share a little bit about what is Manus and why are you excited about it? What's it doing? You've already used it. Let us know.
yeah.
What do we need to know about Manus?
Okay, so I don't know the level of experience with AI in here. So I know most people have probably used ChatGPT, right? There's also Perplexity and Gemini that we talked about. So those are the answer engines. So my presentation was on how to be seen by those, how to have your podcast seen by those. So you need to have a website and put a bunch of this schema code and all this stuff in the back end. But um, when I asked, when I was doing it, I was researching it on them and I asked, like, okay, so how are you search engines different from Google search engine? And they got really mad at me. They're like, oh, we're not search engines. We're answer engines.
Right.
It's like, excuse me. So, um, the like Google's a search engine, so it gives you a list of websites to go to. The answer engines give you an answer, which is why if you're trying to get trust, as Rob was saying, a podcast is amazing to get the trust that you need to have to show up on these they're called large language models like ChatGPT and all the rest. Podcasts foster trust, and that's because they're giving an actual answer. They need to trust the person they're getting the answer from. That's why podcasts are getting so important now for industry too. But Manus is different. Manus is an AI agent. So I don't know how many people here have heard about AI agents. Um, an AI agent does a number of related tasks for you. So I can ask, for instance, Google Gemini. That's what it did. Google Gemini, I'm doing this presentation next week. Give me the slides. Here's my content, put together some slides for me. So it gave me the verbiage of the slides. And then I had to go look, put it in Canva, whatever. I gave that to Manus and I said, my brand colors are blue and yellow and cream. And it gave me the entire slide deck and it was beautiful. Now, there were some mistakes in there. And I said to my husband, I said, oh, I can't get it. And some of the things I could not get it to edit. And he said, well, see if you can download it into PowerPoint and fix it there. And I was able to. So this was this slide deck looked like a high level corporate team had developed it. It was amazing. So it's really good. And then I built a website with it, but it keeps wanting more money from me. um, and so, but I have to see, eventually I'm going to have to take the website off the Manus server and put it somewhere else. Um, so yeah, have you used it, Rob?
I have not used the Manus platform. I've played around with some of the other ones to create websites. I haven't ever completed the process. I'm still working with mainly with WordPress right now.
I'm doing one on WordPress too, which I would actually, I mean, I like the Manus one. It made it super easy. And then I
Yeah,
was able to, so I don't know, maybe we're getting too in the weeds. I was able to hook my own URL up to it, but I think it's still living in the Manus space. So I think they still have control of it. And as I said, Meta just bought them. Facebook guy just bought them.
mm,
So I'm not sure how safe it is to have the data there. So I think eventually I'm going to move it over because WordPress, you have all the control, right?
yeah.
That's why you like WordPress.
Probably too much control. That's the other extreme end of it, is that your options are endless and your learning curve is unbelievable. So
Right.
that's been the experience that I've had with it.
But when I was going into the back end of getting your podcast seen by these large language models, you have to have a website now.
Yeah, text is
Mhm.
important to large language models, right? And
Mhm.
though I would say increasingly, I'm getting the sense that they are indexing and processing the audio increasingly from podcasts. So
Well, I did. I asked one of them, I think it was Gemini. I said, "Can you process this MP3 file and give me my answer?" And it was like,
do I have to?
yeah, do I have to? And I'm like, well, just try. Come on. So I think a lot of these transcription services use Whisper.
Yeah,
And so I saw that it put it through Whisper and it got the transcript. But then it gave me kind of a crappy answer. It's like, well, you made me do this, so I'm not gonna
right.
I'm
You're going to
not
pay
gonna
a
give you
price
the
So
for
answer
that
that.
you
would be
want.
taking for just to back up for a second for some people that might be not knowing what the heck you're talking about. So when you do the podcast, you take the transcription of it and then you're processing it through something called Whisper. Is that how that's
Now,
working?
you take the audio file.
The audio file and putting it through Whisper and Whisper transcribes it?
Yeah, but most people use something else, like they'll use Descript or
Right.
Yeah,
To actually
yeah.
create the
right. That
transcript
does it.
from the audio, and then you cut and paste the full transcript into the large language models to have it summarize it or create a description or other types of
Right.
output that can be used with your podcast, right? Or an
For
To
article
feed
or
to
something like
feed the
that.
lion.
just yeah.
Yeah.
Right, right,
Yeah, feed the beast.
right.
So
Yes.
yeah, so for instance, I'll take the video from this and I'll put it through Descript. And
Mhm.
you know, you right now I can't put it through Gemini because although Gemini can handle lots of different kinds of data, it won't do this. And
Right,
Descript will give me, yeah, and Descript will let me edit it, which is really cool, and it will also give me the transcript. But we pay for Descript.
right,
So if you're serious about this, you probably need to use at least one or two paid tools.
right.
There's a question here. Any new strategies or ways that you see in the podcast space to gain audience? Was there anything, we'll go to Rob first, that you heard sort of at Podfest or that you just know or you know from colleagues that's been helpful, maybe in the AI world or maybe just what's the up and coming thing to try to grasp audience? I know we started speaking at the beginning that there's a lot of competition for attention. So, what can you say to
Mm.
that?
Yeah, I like to keep things pretty straightforward and easy to comprehend. But that question dives into elements that are becoming increasingly complex, and they're not easy to answer. That there's like a couple of strategies that will guarantee growth. That's one of the big tensions in the medium right now, is that there is no clear path to growth right now. It depends on where you want to play with your content, where you want to distribute it, what's the format of it, and that will oftentimes gauge the reasonable expectation of results or audience. And because we are in a multi-format, multi-platform environment. It kind of depends on what you want to do. In a lot of ways, what people are being forced into thinking about is, well, what format or what type of content do I need to create to appeal to, let's say, the YouTube algorithm, right? So that's a completely separate type of thought process to how a typical podcaster goes through. Because a typical podcaster in like Apple Podcasts, if you're doing audio only or you're doing, is not algorithmically judged right now or presented audience to based on some algorithm. Though I think we're probably moving in that direction, probably with Apple and with Spotify. And as they get maybe more involved in video, there's going to be an interest in using algorithms to evaluate content. So I think that's kind of like the tension of the space. I mean, it depends on what you want to do. If you want to be an audio creator, then that's a whole nother set of challenges. If you want to be a YouTube creator, there's a bunch of different issues that you have to think about to drive audience. And I think that's at the core of what that tension is that's in the medium right now. And that's what we talked about on the New Media Show from Podfest, was this tension between audio and video and what's different about it and how to approach it.
Is there a strategy? Because I hear you. There's many strategies depending upon the medium and the goal. Is there one strategy that if someone were just starting or somebody listening tonight could walk away and say, okay, well, Rob did this and that was pretty successful? What would you say that might be?
Well, like I said before, it really depends on where you enter. If you enter from a video perspective, or if you enter from audio and video, or do you enter from, just audio or one side of this, dictates.
So let's go with video and audio
Right.
and video, because it sounds like the massive trend is to go towards video. So most that are starting, I'm making an assumption, but might be starting with both.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you, Rob, before we even go there. So here is a problem with that, with YouTube, having it on YouTube and Spotify and everywhere. You want to try to concentrate your audience on one platform, right? So you have to, your call to action has to be subscribe here or listen here or whatever. And if you have a bunch of different ones, doesn't that spread that out so that your subscribers look lower?
Well, that really cuts to the heart of the tension that we're faced with here is that there's a view out there that just get involved in one. Start down the path with audio or start down the path with video. And you can always evolve into the different ones, but the key takeaway is that you should become successful on one of these tracks, right? Before you try and jump to another track. And that requires a different kind of a skill set. So if you just want to be an audio creator, it depends on what your passion is, then there's a set of strategies to do that, right? So you need to think about the basics. Think about your marketing and your branding and your personality and your format of what you're doing with the audio podcast. Now, if you want to do audio and video, that adds a layer of complexity to this, because then you have to think about formats that cater to video experiences as well as audio experiences. So I'm recommending that if a person starts, to choose a lane and get the best and do the best that you can in that particular lane, whether it be audio, video, or a hybrid model, which is both, because I'm not sure that any one person can really effectively succeed in doing the hybrid model first, because that requires skills that may be beyond most people's entry point skill set, right? So there's a lot of things to learn, like mic skills, what's the room acoustics that you have, what's your skills at creating conversations. Let's say you're doing an interview podcast. It takes practice. It takes, taking reps at this and getting better over time. But what is winning in the space right now, and that's where we get into this conversation about the pro creators that are out there right now, is that what are the very successful content creators doing right now? The ones that have scaled to large audiences is more of a hybrid model, which is being able to focus on video, and because video is very good at discovery, right? Audio podcasting is really good at building deep relationships with audiences. So each one of these mediums has their strengths and their weaknesses. Typically, video doesn't build necessarily the same type of loyalty in the audience that you see with audio. And it's because audio is very personal. It's typically people listen to it in their earbuds, right? It's right there with them, and it tends to be habitual, right? So people are wanting consistency on the audio side. They want to know you're there. They're thinking of you as being their friend in their ear of sorts. Where video is a little bit more of a hit and miss kind of a thing. People will either watch you on their big screen TV, or they'll pop you up on their phone. Like shorts are very kind of scrolling and hit and miss type of content. So you have to think about what you're trying to build. If you're trying to build trust relationships with your audience, then the best path is audio. But format flexibility really, really wins. And this new concept that's being talked about in the industry right now is called liquid content, which means you're creating content with a multi-use mindset behind it. So you have an approach that is a little bit closer to what I call a hybrid model, right? Which is what I've been trying to do with using tools like StreamYard, is to be able to come in, create a show that's audio and video at the same time, but keeping in mind what the differences are between audio and video. So when you put it out as an audio and video, separate audio and video experience, you're not leaving the audience in the dust with the audio version, because you showed things on the screen in your video that the people listening had no idea about, right?
Kind of like being attacked by a cat while you're trying to run a meeting.
Right. I mean, that's what's great about video. I can see the cat that's running around on your desk.
Well, it's funny too, because when we started the Passage to Profit show at iHeart on radio, it was for inventors, and people would come in with their product and they'd see you turn it like this, and we'd be like, no, people can't see that.
Right.
You have to make this for audio only. Yes, this will be on YouTube, so if you want to see the cat, you will. He's like really into this. I don't know what.
So another thing I wanted to just mention really quick is that you probably didn't hear me say anything about social media or social media platforms. Because for many years, people in the podcasting space saw the way to grow your podcast is to build word of mouth sharing, right? So you want to encourage your audience to tell others about your podcast. And the research shows that audience that tell other people to recommend your show typically view that as an endorsement, right? And they tend to be attracted to actually give your show a try, because my boyfriend or my friend recommended to listen to the show. So I pull up my Apple Podcasts app and I search for whatever the name of that show is, or a friend sends me a link to something. And that is an important aspect that takes advantage of the personalized, trust-based approach that audio has. And so that's why I'm trying to share that there's kind of different strategies on both sides of this, where if you're playing into the algorithm, it's not so much about personal sharing, though there's a piece to that, right? I mean, you obviously want to tell your friends, if you're doing a video show, that you're doing a video show on YouTube and things like that, where people can find you. But really, this whole trust piece really lives mostly in the audio side. And brands and individuals that are trying to build personal brands are have an opportunity with audio that's different than the video, though they can ride together. But it's more complicated than it was many years ago around how to market a podcast now.
Yeah, and I usually focus on the back end on the so I do digital marketing for Gearhart Law.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking at the back end of things, and I'm asking now Gemini, especially Google Gemini because of YouTube, because we have everything on YouTube and we do the audio version too, but they're different. Um, I'm asking it, what do you want to see? Like, can you optimize this for search? Because
Yeah.
even though the audio is on Spotify and they're looking at downloads and listeners and everything, there are people searching on Google and there will be people searching on ChatGPT for your podcast. That
True.
was what my whole talk was about. How do you make ChatGPT see your podcast? And there's a lot you need to do in the back end. And you can just find out yourself. Like you could just ask it, like,
Yeah.
how do what do I need to do? It'll tell you because it wants your content because they're feeding the machine, right? So it's already gobbled up everything that's out there. It wants fresh new content, and what it wants is real content. It wants conversational. It wants people talking to each other in an interview style. And so podcasts are just perfect for that.
So I
You know,
asked it
Elizabeth, when
to find and tell me about the podcasts that I do, right? To do a little research on what it knows about the podcast that I do. I don't always trust it that it's going to give me, I have to prompt it to say, only show me what is being shown publicly if a different person was asking about this, right?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
it
Oh yeah,
will
because
create a feedback loop on you, right?
it knows. Oh yeah, I had it taught me once. I said, well, because I kept checking for myself, and I said, well, tell me the sources you used. It said, well, I didn't have to use any because I already had all
I know
this.
you.
Yeah, like a
I know
snotty
everything about you.
teenager.
Right.
You know, Elizabeth, one of the things I thought was so interesting when you were preparing for your presentation at Podfest was this idea of now with so much being about the LLMs and about, them recognizing you and all the work that you do on the back end of that to be seen. It really was a shift in mindset of it's no longer necessarily looking for the audience, it's now looking for the machine to recognize you. So it's less about audience recognition than machine recognition. And that was like a real shift in sort of perspective because we haven't necessarily thought that way. It's always about the people in the audience. And now it's like,
Right.
oh, wait a second, how can I be seen by the machine? Because the
Right.
machine is going to be what will probably lead you to the people.
Right.
So just a very different shift and curious actually from both of you, your thoughts on that. Do you think that's actually accurate or and if so, should our focus be less about how do we get people to listen and how do we get the machine to know who we are so that eventually people will listen?
Well, I do you want to go first, Rob, and then I'll tell my experience?
Well, one thing that I've heard and I've talked about many times on our podcast is that we're increasingly writing for the algorithms or writing for Google, right? And we're
Mm-hmm.
speaking to humans. So
Yes.
that'll dictate a little bit of how you think about this because most humans don't read long show notes, right? Or text that is written about a particular episode that they just want to listen to it. And so, you do have to play this multi-medium game with your content. Creating
Mm-hmm.
video, text, and audio has proven over the years to be the most effective approach. If you're only doing audio and you're not really involved in text, then you're missing a bunch of readers out there that maybe would scan the text to find out if they're interested in the audio. So you have a bunch of people that have different discovery processes that they go to. And now we've layered on top of this the AI bots that are out there indexing and pulling in your information at a deeper level and can actually be answer engines based on the content that you've put out publicly. And that's what I was trying to say earlier is that I think that most of these LLMs are actually listening to the audio of your podcast. and creating transcripts and indexing those themselves. And I'm increasingly seeing specific references to a specific location and topic in the middle of a podcast that is coming up in the chat GPT results. It depends on how you query it, but it's been a little bit revealing to see that happen, because I think that they are starting to index the audio now.
Well, yeah, the other thing, so I focused on like what Google search was, what the LLMs wanted, but then after I started playing with Manus and realized that, yes, it was using my content, but it was also pulling some content from the web and it could answer questions. I asked,
it's doing both, right?
yeah, so I said, well, do we have to optimize for AI agents differently than we optimize for LLMs? And it said yes. And so you have to
That's
have a
interesting.
website
Yeah.
to do it. Yeah. I mean, it's just so moving so fast, you know.
Right.
I didn't know about Manus before the conference. If I'd known about Manus
Yeah.
before the conference, I would have said it there. But so you have to have a website that you put everything into this one big file and you cram it into the back end of your website for the AI agents. And the reason for that you have to worry about that is because these AI agents are starting to become more and more prevalent.
Well, and the concept of an AI agent is really to perform tasks that are linked up with a workflow, right? So you have, a particular agent that does a particular task, and then they take the information from that task and it goes into another AI agent that does something different with that, and then it goes into another one. It actually, if you're using Chat GPT, was it 5.2
Yeah, I think
thinking, you can see those processes going on right on the screen as it's processing your query or your prompt.
Manus does the same thing. It's
Right.
crazy. There's
So
all this code
it's got
going.
its own agentic workflow that's being built into these chatbots now, and that's just an early glimpse on where this is all going, because eventually all of the apps, that you see on your phone, on your iPhone or your Android device, all those apps are going to be built in to these chatbots, these AI chatbots. So you'll be able to tell, I want to book a flight going from here to there on this date and at this time, and I want to stay in a hotel that costs this much and it has this many star ratings, that's close to this particular location, and it will actually use all of the apps that are built into its infrastructure to actually do that task for you. And if it has your
I think
credit
it's
card,
already starting to actually.
right,
I had a friend who booked a trip through ChatGPT, so I
But
think
so
it's
here's
already on its
right,
way.
and if it has your credit
Yeah.
card information, it can actually
yeah.
transact it. So,
So here's the thing. If you're a Marriott, you need to be seen by that
right,
AI agent.
which means you
So
have to build your app into that
yeah,
infrastructure.
you have to build your back end of your website or whatever
Yeah,
so that the AI agent sees you.
right.
Same thing, I think, with I mean, I'm looking at a crystal ball. I don't know how far down the road we're
Yeah,
talking,
yeah.
but I think it's going to be the same. I don't think the first slide, one of the first slides of my presentation was a woman running through New York saying, give me a podcast that talks about running through New York and give me an episode that talks about downtown neighborhoods for running. And, really niche. And I think, and then hook it up to Spotify. And I think that's what's going to start happening. I mean, that's what I'm doing. Like, I'm not going to Spotify to find podcasts anymore. If I want a podcast, I just ask Chat.
Well, and you'll be able to follow a particular podcast in the Chat GPT platform at some point,
Mm-hmm.
and it will prompt you. It'll pop up a notification on your phone to say, a favorited podcast just published a new episode. Click here to listen, and it'll come out of the Chat GPT platform.
But
Is
yeah, I
I
do
mean,
want to
that's
say
where it's going, right?
that's where it's going. And there's programs to help you do that aren't that expensive. So don't get deterred by this. Like, because when I was looking at that, okay, how do I get the AI agents to find my stuff? It's like, oh, well, just use this software that somebody developed for it, and it's not expensive, right? So start your podcast anyway, and then worry about this stuff after you get the content really great, right?
Well, and it's going to be
Somebody
built.
asked, yeah,
Yeah, it's going to
sorry.
be
I
built
was just going to
into.
ask another question.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
I didn't, no, listen, no, finish the thought by all means.
Well, I was just going to mention that this capability is going to be built into ChatGPT, probably from Apple Podcasts and Spotify. They're going to integrate their apps in there. It depends on if Apple's going to have their own, right? So they may not integrate into the ChatGPT platform. They may want to. Apple may want to integrate it into their iPhones with an AI interface and not even include it in Chat GPT. It depends on the business deal that they do, right? And so I think that's what's going to happen too. So you've seen specific apps be only available on certain platforms, and then you've seen other apps be on all the platforms. And I think that's going to happen with Chat.
And if you do want to
all
know
these
this
AI
back,
platforms, right?
if you want to know the back end stuff, just ask Chat. It'll tell you exactly what to do.
Yeah, right.
It wants your
Somebody
content.
How's
asked
this
just
gonna
as
work?
sort of a question about, wouldn't the episode description be enough to entice a listener if it's written well? And it sounds, from everything that we're talking about that's gone to like all of these different integrations of apps to LLMs and all the rest of it, that it's like so complicated. Just going back to basics, is that enough?
Well, I think we're all going to have to develop different prompting skills than what we've been accustomed to with Google. It's going to require a different thought process for us to extract what we want from these platforms, because it's probably going to come to a point where these platforms are integrated into glasses like the Meta glasses and these, and your device, your mobile phone will have like one little box or audio entry system on the screen, and you won't have apps on the screen anymore. And I'm not a big fan of the audio queries, right, where you voice it into the phone. I mean,
Oh, my
there's not.
husband loves that. He loves
Well,
that. He
it's
named
great
his
if you're
Steve.
not in a public
It's great when you're
environment.
driving.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I was, the Wova app, it picked up the TV. I was responding to somebody on there, and I'm like, what is this paragraph about? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just in a public forum or a public place. I don't think you want to be talking into your phone. That's the thing. So that's going to be
you're
happening
right.
more in private at
Can I
home.
just,
Right. Oh, go
Sonia, I
ahead.
just, I just want to say we're seeing people
Please.
that want to form a community. If you want to form a
Yes.
community, put your email in the chat and we will make a community where we can all
Yes. Thank you,
interact.
Elizabeth. Yes, that is very exciting to see that that's growing, and we would love to accommodate that. So, yes, please, everybody who wants to be involved, put your name and email in there. I wanted to ask you both actually on monetization ideas, because I know this is sort of once you get going, but are there any new trends, new learning from Podfest or anything else that you'd like to share around the monetization strategies
I want to
for
go
Pod?
first because I want to give Rob a little bit of a shout out about this. One thing people, one people think people are doing is joining networks because the networks have a monetization method, right, Rob? And you share it, but it's better than getting nothing, right?
Well, yeah, I think that the monetization stuff is important, but in some ways it's getting a little out of hand. So there's kind of two sides to this issue or this topic. There's over commercialization and there's just right commercialization that's happening in the podcasting space. We're starting to get to a point where there are platforms and podcasts that have more ads in them now than commercial radio had. So, that's the tension that's already here now. Commercial radio and public radio have had a big influence on podcasting and the development of all this. And so, of course, their business models from the radio side are coming into podcasting because their broadcast side is in a state of decline. So they want to make up that revenue. So the path to do that typically aligns with more ads. And so advertising has gotten a lot easier. There's what's called programmatic advertising, which is more automated advertising that you create insertion points in your content. It hasn't really come that much to video yet. It's really only available on YouTube. But on the podcasting side, it's audio ads typically. But those can be automated, right? So you as a creator don't really have to do anything. All you have to do is establish the locations in your content that you want those sponsor messages to be, or you just voice them yourself. So let's say you go out and get a sponsor for your podcast, or there's a brand that you want to represent on your show, that you just voice that spot or that endorsement right in the body of the content. But you can increasingly pre-record that host endorsement and insert it in the content too. So there's options here. My caution is, don't go down this rabbit hole too far, because it can make it difficult for your audience to continue listening to your program if it has too many ads in it. So
I agree.
that's
iHeart just
that's the
loads
caution.
ours up.
Well, they
Yeah.
have I would say that they have the biggest reputation. I think their typical ad loads are right approaching what it was on commercial radio with podcasts now.
I think it's even worse. But another
Yeah,
way, Rob,
well, it depends on
yeah,
the length
it's
of the program
yeah.
too, right?
But what do you think about this? If you have a website, what do you think about affiliate marketing? So I don't know if everybody knows what that is, but you like, let's say this microphone, this is a Tonor, and I tell everybody, oh, I love this Tonor mic. You should go buy one if you're starting out. They're only $50 or whatever. And then I have a link in
Yeah,
on my website for you to click to go buy the Tonor mic. And when you do that, I get a little bit of money back. So
yeah,
what do you think about having a website and doing affiliate marketing?
yeah. I think it's a good way to get into endorsement type of opportunities. Yeah, I think you have to be cognizant that it depends on the size of your audience and how aligned your audience is to that brand or that product,
Hmm.
that will have a big impact on what your results are, what your revenue would come from doing that endorsement. But I do think that, it's going to be interesting to see how the LLMs handle this aspect of
Yeah,
things, right? So
yeah.
if you have a podcast where you do a host endorsement that's an affiliate link, is that going to be reflected in the output that these AI platforms put out that's related to your show, or if they're going to filter that out and use their own, or
Mhm.
link to their partner. Let's say Amazon does a deal with Chat
Mm-hmm.
GPT and integrates their whole product catalog into it. So when you do a search for a particular product, they will come up with a direct link to Amazon. They probably won't feature your link that you talked about in the content. So,
So that might not work. I did
yeah.
look. There is supposedly this company AdForsec that allows you to put ads into ChatGPT, but I couldn't get it to work. I tried using it.
Well,
Um, so that's coming. So Rob is really right. So ChatGPT and the others are going to be serving ads very soon, I think.
yeah, I think that they already announced that they're going to get into the advertising business. Just keep in mind, all these platforms are investing billions of dollars into infrastructure, and guess what? They're going to have to monetize that. Also, they're going to
Yeah.
lose their investment promises that have been promised to them to build out data centers and you know nuclear power plants to power
Yeah.
these AI platforms. That's going to cost billions of dollars. And guess what? There's a lot of pressure on Chat GPT and OpenAI to monetize their platform increasingly, just like what we saw in the early years with Facebook. There
Hmm.
was a lot of concern that Facebook wouldn't survive because they didn't have a strong revenue model. How would they keep investing in infrastructure and scaling their platform unless they started making money? And so they went down the path of advertising, and that's what we're seeing happen with OpenAI, where they're going to go after making huge amounts of money. So you start thinking about how they're going to integrate these apps into their platform, and guess what? They're creating a new Android app store, but it's going to be OpenAI's app store. And so they're going to look for a 20 to 30% cut of the transactions that come out of that too. And that's their revenue model going forward, I believe, anyway.
Right. Well, Chat has its own browser now, and um, Terry Brock at Podfest talked about personalized Google. And so I looked at that a little bit, and I haven't dug too far into it, but yeah, there. And the thing, what we're talking about with the energy consumption, so these servers to run these programs suck a whole bunch of energy, And I think New Jersey's paying for it though, because our utility bills keep getting doubled and
It's the
tripled.
same thing. It's the same thing up here in Connecticut too. Our electricity bills went up 20% at the first of the
Yeah.
year.
And so they're talking really in New Jersey, they're talking about building nuclear power plants in southern New Jersey now to power the servers for these large language models because it sucks so much energy. And I'm like, well, can't they just solve the cold fusion problem? Like, can't AI solve? I don't know, maybe it will tower itself someday, but Rob's right. So I mean, it is going to take a lot of money for them to keep going.
I'm sure they will find a way.
Yeah.
There's an interesting question in here coming from the entertainment business where I had, an agent, multiple agents, managers, etc. And also with a husband in production and producing, he would produce shows. Here is a question around doing that kind of format for podcasts. So, are there podcasting agencies now to pitch a podcast idea where they can assist with producing podcasts? And I would sort of add on to that. Could there be more of an entertainment model as well where people are represented, you know?
Well, what we're finding for Passage to Profit is through Podmatch, we're getting a lot of publicists that are bringing
Mhm.
people onto our show. But I have not seen a podcast pitch agency. Have you, Rob, seen that?
Yeah, it typically doesn't really work that way necessarily. I think there was an era just a few years ago. A I think a good example of this is Wondery, which is now which is owned by Amazon, which was a kind of like a development company that got pitches from creators out there that it's kind of like what authors do to pitch like a publisher or something like that, where they will help them create a
Sure.
book. Um,
Hmm.
but podcasting is a little different than that because it takes a lot of investment and a lot of producers and a lot of kind of development to go through that process. So oftentimes people will that want to do that are looking for backers or investors in that content, and that's not typically how things are done. That may be how things are done at big corporations that want to start a new like brand show or something like that. That the corporation will invest in the infrastructure to create that content, but there aren't really any what I would call agencies like studios, like you would think of from a Hollywood era, that will
Hmm.
fund and support the creation of a podcast. Typically, the studio production people out there want the creator to fund it by paying the agency to produce the podcast for them. So it puts the burden on the creator. It's a little bit like the model that has existed for a long time around the indie movie side of things, where the director or the creator of uh, or the script owner or whatever would actually go out and find separate investors that would invest in hiring a production company. So that's kind of where we're at right now with podcasts. So it's really a creator driven kind of ecosystem right now that is driven based on, you know, basically paying others to do the production. But more
It
often,
is an interesting one, though. I wonder moving forward, especially as bigger businesses get in and more money is involved, and because TV and entertainment is really taking a bit of a dive, and podcasts have gone up and other forms of entertainment. YouTube is really like one of the biggest, like, more views on YouTube than there are on television these
yeah,
days. So I wonder
right.
if there might come a point in the future where that could shift.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it certainly could, though I would say what we've seen over the last couple of years is a significant budget decline in producing any content now.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, you're not seeing as much going forward these huge multi-million-dollar budgets into creating movies now because there
Not at
really
all.
isn't
Too
really
expensive.
any kind of a distribution that's out there that people are going to in movie theaters anymore. It's all going straight to digital now. Um, And
Which is
that's
why I thought, oh, there could be a rise of like, oh, suddenly there could be a podcast channel, right? Like
yeah, yeah,
where that
and
becomes the show.
right, and AI is also going to change a lot of this
Yeah.
dynamic too. It's also going to lower the production costs and the ability
Mhm.
to produce this content. So if
Mhm.
you have an idea that can be put into, you know, an audio video engine that can generate that content for you based on a script or an outline or an extensive prompt that will create that whole program for you, that may be where we're going with all this, and that's a much lower cost production. So it may be most of these shows, big shows that we see in the future, will be probably self-funded.
That's
Is
yeah, interesting. Somebody actually made a comment, Frank, thank you. Gen Z Media here in Maplewood have turned tween podcasts into shows purchased by Disney, Netflix, and Hulu. Amazing success story. So maybe that's the direction it goes. So you won't be pitching your podcast, but you make it, and maybe it will get picked up by a studio in some
yeah.
capacity.
Well, really, if you look at all those, um, Hulu, Disney, and Netflix have been production studios that invest in projects, right? So
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
they are, but they're also the distribution too. So they have
Yeah.
kind of like a more consolidated approach to what's happening in the market, where it used to be in old Hollywood or whatever that you had the studios and you had distribution were separate. Um, so it's
Yeah.
integrated.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
Um, Elizabeth, maybe I'll bump to you for a second. Were there any other major takeaways from Podfest that you're just like, oh, I can't end tonight without sharing this? I know Manus was a big one for you. Was there anything else?
Well, for YouTube, there was so the closing keynote, there was a guy that it was crazy. It was this younger guy, and he started his YouTube channel when he had a girlfriend. Did you see that one, Rob?
Hmm.
And he just kind of tracked their family evolution, and they had a couple kids. Anyway, this guy has a ton of followers. He's monetizing. He's like, over 100 grand in YouTube. And his advice for 2026 for YouTube was just flood your stuff with shorts. So a short a day or more. So YouTube Shorts was really where he felt if you were going to direct your energy, that should go. Um, I also I had a fun experience there. I was on a podcast there, so that's the cool thing about going is you get on other people's podcasts. I did want to say a little bit about for people doing interview podcasts because this was kind of tough, I thought. So this guy had written a book on how a lawyer can start a podcast, and he had invited a couple of lawyers that had turned into podcast producers for lawyers, so they had their own kind of agencies. And it was kind of embarrassing because they were like, "Ah, lawyers don't need to know any of that stuff in your book." And I'm like, he's doing this podcast to promote his book. So, so I was like, well, I feel like they should at least know it because there's a lot of scammers out there, and they should at least know like how much stuff should cost and stuff. And the guy was like, ah, there's no scammers. I run an agency, blah, blah, blah. So I felt really bad for the guy running the podcast. So just be careful who you invite on your podcast, especially like if you're trying to promote your own thing, because these guys were opposite. So that was a little tough, but it was still enjoyable being on that. And then I presented on in the AI track, and the recording didn't the sound didn't get it recorded. So they told me I could record again on the big stage, which was so cool. I'm like, God, I love these guys. And so when I went to record, I went up and the AV guy there that was handling everything, he's like, oh, there's a couple people who goes, oh, are you the AI lady? And I was like, yes, I'm the AI lady. So now so I'm owning that. So now I have the AI lady at work blog. So which will probably be a little podcast at some point. But yeah, so that was really fun. And I guess Manus, and then like there were new tools that were laid out, but it was just really fun talking to everybody. And it was really high energy. And I thought that the event was really well organized and well run. I've been to some that are just like sales the whole way through. This was really people helping each other. So I thought it was a great conference.
Nice. Excellent. And Rob, any other takeaways from your experience in Podfest that we didn't cover necessarily tonight that you're like burning to share? Or even trends because you're so on the cutting edge of it, and
Yeah,
it's been fantastic to hear and to sort of talk about that because there is really a shift, and so keeping that in mind even if you're starting is really really important. But curious, are there any other takeaways or any other things that you'd really want to impart?
sure.
Uh,
Yeah, I would say that the Podfest conference really caters to individual creators, folks like probably all of you out there that are interested in starting a podcast. It's a good place to go to learn and to meet others that are going through that same process. And that Podfest, uh, the actual address podfestexpo.com if you want to read more about it. But they also do what's called pod tours. So they hold local events or regional events all around the country throughout the year. So if you happen to live in one of those cities that they are doing a pod tour event, you can pop in and start meeting people from the podcast industry if you have questions or if you want to connect with people from Podfest directly. You can do that.
Mhm.
There's events that are held in New York and Atlanta and Chicago and all that stuff all over the country throughout the year. So just go to their website and look at the list of pod tour events that they have, and that may enable you to connect with a Podfest type of an event in your local area.
Well,
So
and Rob, you and I both ended up at the New York one this year.
yep, yep.
And do you normally
yeah.
go? Yeah.
Yeah, I
Do you
try and
normally
go to
go?
all the ones that I can get to easily. I typically won't fly to any of them unless I am invited to go by Podfest. But yeah, I try and do also their calls that they have. So they also have a regular town hall call that they put on a regular basis to stay connected to the community because that's really what Podfest is really all about is trying to keep the community connected to each other. That's what's different. Really, at the end of the day, what's different than podcast movement. So,
Mhm.
if you're just getting started, or if you've been podcasting for a while, really, Podfest is the event to align with now.
Mhm.
Yeah. So if you want to meet Rob in person,
Yeah,
he lives in
Go to
Connecticut.
a
He goes
pod
to
tour.
any
Yeah,
pod
that was
tour.
how I learned
Yeah.
about it. I went to one
Yeah.
in Nashville, and then I was like,
oh
Elizabeth,
yeah,
we gotta go to New
yeah,
York. So we did New
Yeah.
York, and
yep.
it's great. And they're free too, so it's a really it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
always held in Orlando. So if you ever wanted to go in mid-January to actually go
Or
to the main event, that's the place to go if you want to get away from the snow.
and I want to say one thing about the hotel this year. They had their restaurant the best hamburgers we've had in a
Well,
long
everybody ate
time.
the hamburgers there. What do you mean? Yeah,
Oh my
right.
God. I asked them what is it? They said fresh ingredients that are local. I said, oh, alligator meat, maybe.
Yeah, right.
but, but the food was really good. And there was a lot of places to network. And they had breakout rooms so you could go do your own podcast. It was great.
You know, we have a lot of people who came on tonight saying they were thinking of starting their podcast, and we often do. And so I'm wondering if there's any one piece of advice too, because I think we really sort of did the span and a lot of high level
Yeah.
podcast talk, and I'm wondering if we could bring it back just to the beginners. If there's something, if you haven't started it yet, it may feel like so overwhelming, like, oh my gosh, where do I even
Yeah.
go from here? And so is there is there a piece of advice that you could give to somebody starting out? What would be the best path forward? I think it was actually even a question on here tonight, but what are one or two pieces of advice for a beginner? I'll go with you, Elizabeth, and then let
Okay.
you
Okay.
wrap that one, Rob. Thanks.
So I help people start podcasts in my studio in Summit. And I like to sit down with them and say, okay, do you know what you want to do, have your podcast about? And they usually do, which is really great. And do you want to interview people? What? So I think the first thing, like if you're just starting, get the format, get the name, figure out how you want to do it. And then the rest of the stuff will fall into line later. So record a few episodes, see how it feels. And if you're still not sure if you want to do one, go on other people's podcasts first. And then I start with YouTube and get it for YouTube because that's the best for discoverability, I feel like. And then after that, we'll pull the audio out for Spotify or Apple, well, all the platforms.
Great. Okay. Excellent. Rob,
Yeah, I
with
would
your
say,
many years of experience, all of the waves of podcasting, everything it's gone through, I can't even imagine every year this advice might change, or maybe it
oh, it
doesn't.
does
What
change.
is
Oh,
it?
oh yeah, yeah. I would say it does change to somewhat. You know, it changes with time, definitely, but really fundamentally, at the end of the day, starting a podcast is really all about, and maybe this is common sense, is just understand what your goals are, what you want to accomplish by doing it, and then do your research. Find out, what's that topic, how many other shows are out there doing it. Do searches in Google, do searches in Apple Podcasts or in Spotify. Find other shows that are already doing the topic that you're talking about or interested in talking about, and learn from those. Listen to those shows. Become like a passionate podcast consumer first before you start a show. And that'll at least set the table, and you can develop your own ability to distinguish what you like, what you don't like, what are they doing on that show that you agree with, what are they doing on that show that you disagree with, and how would you do it differently. And that'll help you formulate your own plan about what you want to do to be different than that, or hopefully better than what you've heard. And that's not going to be difficult to do. I think being different is very important if you want to become a content creator and find success out there. But think about who your audience is. Think about who you are trying to reach with your podcast as much as you can. Do some keyword research, keyword phrases, and look for mappings to where audiences are to some degree. Now, granted, it's always good to follow your heart, follow your passions, follow what you're interested in, and also go after topics that you can talk about and that will maintain your energy. And this is really where the tension is, really, between podcasting and YouTube, being a YouTube creator. YouTubers are being forced into playing the algorithm game, which means that they're being forced into talking about things they may not have a passion for. And so that's clearly what the dividing line is between being a YouTube creator finding success and being a podcaster finding success. Podcasting is about passion. It's about your ability to talk about something intelligently and with value to others. That's the case with YouTube, but they push you down this path of talking about topics that are already popular over there. And it's just a different mentality. So
I actually am curious your thoughts on this with YouTube because there's some people that I've followed. Um, all right, it was an astrologer. She does a lot of world astrology. And she's actually been like shadow banned from YouTube because of certain things that she said. So now they're coming with so many rules on what you can and can't say.
yes.
So while they may push you down one avenue, they're also preventing you from perhaps going down an
Yep.
avenue that you feel particularly passionate about. Do you think trending forward, that's going to become more of a thing moving forward in YouTube, podcasting, both, or specific just to YouTube?
Well, we've had content moderation in podcasting as well as YouTube for many years now. So there are topics that will uh, get banned, yeah, or pushed off the platform. Though I would say that the last year or so, it's not as extreme as it used to be. I would say now the filtering is really around copyright more. So you're really up against the wall around copyright holders that are getting incorporated into these platforms. Plus, if you want to monetize, these moderation platforms are actually penalizing creators for their infractions around community guidance and those kind of things. And really, the massive penalty now is demonetization, right?
Yeah,
So,
that was, I think, what
right.
happened on several episodes
Yep.
because she mentioned a country or a leader, and they were off limits.
Yeah, and it's hard to
So it's
know
interesting.
in advance all these things too. All you're doing is
Right.
creating the most compelling content that you can think of, and you have opinions and you have thoughts, and you share them on your show, and sometimes you have to learn the hard way
Yeah.
on some of these things.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's necessarily good that people are filtering based on topics out there. I'm kind of a free speech kind of a person, right? So
Mhm.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
used to, but I also know what the realities are of what's happening out there, and it's, you have to be careful these days.
Awesome. And what one final question. Is there anything that you will do differently moving forward in 2026 based on either what you learned, what you know, or just this tension
Right.
that you're talking about?
Really, I think for me is becoming a more professionalized video creator. I think trying to get more disciplined on that is key, because I've been kind of getting by for years with very kind of loosey goosey podcast content, right? That isn't very refined, structured to cater to what the needs of the audience has. I haven't really thought about that. I've really spent most of my career thinking more about what I wanted to create, not what the audience wants to hear. And so that's the big takeaway that I have from YouTube is that YouTube is learning from their audience, right? And that's what's driving their algorithm. And that's forcing content creators to think more about, well, how do I package my content to get results from the algorithm, which the algorithm is a reflection of the audience, but it also, I think, has some, uh, Google and YouTube have a thumb on the scale on that. I think they have biases around what's good content, what's not good content, but it has a feedback process from the audience that's giving it signals. It's saying, well, how long are people listening or watching this? Are they clicking on the thumbnails? What's the conversion of clicking on a thumbnail to duration of viewing?
Yeah.
Right. So these are all factors that it's getting that are not factors typically in driving audience in audio podcasting, though I think it's
Mhm.
coming. Um, yeah.
Well, and I
Nice.
know this
And
is
how
like
about
the
you,
tail end,
Elizabeth?
but
Yeah.
well, but that's what we love about YouTube too, is there's so many analytics and you can track your video
Yeah.
and see where people are dropping off and everything. So,
Can be a little
so
depressing too.
I
Yeah.
know. So, so
Yep.
my husband and I are kind of divide and conquer, and we have an assistant who helps us too. Well, we're like three ways divide and conquer. I told him, you work on the content. And we split ours, it's an hour long, so we split it up into different segments. And we try to make the segments entertaining for people. So we try to do edutainment. Um, and our assistant works on like editing and all that other stuff. And then I work on the back end. So what I'm doing different in 2026 is I'm asking Google and all the other ones like, okay, what can you put this schema code on the website? Can you put this in text? So what do I need to have on my website versus my transcript for YouTube, which you just put the whole transcript on YouTube, but then you pretty it up for your website, right?
Right.
And what do I need to have on my show notes for the LLMs to find? And so I'm just really going deep into like the back end of the digital stuff. And so we're lucky because we have a team that we can split things up.
Right.
Nice, but really deep into the research, into the back end, into the search engines, and how important that
Right.
really is. So, yeah, that's great.
Yeah, because I think we're
Well,
going that way. Yeah. So
yeah. Final comments. How can people find you? I know Robbie shared your show, but please, can you share anything else where you want people to come listen, find, learn, know everything there is to know?
Yeah.
Follow.
I probably the best place to go is robgreenley.com. And I think I shared that URL in the comments, and I could share it again. Um, and then also newmediashow.com as well is the other one. I run or I'm involved in two podcast networks. One's called adorenetwork.com, and that's ADORE network.com. And then one is passionstrucknetwork.com. So those are two networks that I'm working on, and I think those are and then I have a YouTube channel at Rob Greenley with the same spelling as well. And if you wanted to go see the Hall of Fame, I would go to podcasthall.com. And right on the homepage of that website is a YouTube video that plays the full Hall of Fame ceremony from Orlando at Podfest. So go check it out. Yeah.
And when I put this through chat, or whoever will take an hour long or hour and a half long transcript, I'll ask it to pull out all those links and it'll do it for me, right?
Yeah.
So
Excellent. And will it pull out all of their emails too? Because we're going to put
yeah,
this group together.
I'll have the chat. I'll put the chat separate. Yeah, so those will be in the chat. So we get a chat file. So yeah, I can have it do that too. And we can make a community out of this.